Welcome to College Prep 1 and our first day of the introduction of writing, grammar, and punctuation. Subjects and verbs. Of course, every place that we need to start out our understanding for grammar, punctuation, and writing starts with the very basics with subjects and verbs. Every sentence has both a subject and a verb. Seems very plain and simple. If you don't have a subject and you don't have a verb, then of course you do not have a full and complete sentence. These are the two very basic building blocks of a sentence. If a sentence does not have a subject or a verb, it is called a dependent clause. If you've ever heard a teacher talk and you're wondering, well, I have a full and complete sentence, what's that called? That's called an independent clause because, of course, independent means it can stand alone. A dependent clause, in the other sense, means that it has to be dependent on something else and it depends on something to make it a full and complete sentence. So dependent clauses are not sentences. They do not have a subject and a verb, so maybe they're missing one or maybe they're missing the other. And they will leave the reader asking for more information. Most of the time, if you think of a dependent clause, it's someone who just stops short. Here are a few examples of dependent clauses. Running to the bus. Well, what's missing about running to the bus? As we can see here with running ends in ing. This is considered an action verb. Running to the bus. Well, what happened? Who happened? Who ran to the bus? What ran to the bus? This sentence or this dependent clause just doesn't make sense without an actual subject. So what's a way that we can fix running to the bus? Of course, one way to fix running to the bus, you could put a comma instead of the period and put running to the bus, comma, the girl was late. Or the girl slipped as she was running to the bus. Sentence 2, the pretty little girl that was tall. Thinking about this, the pretty little girl. Do I have my subject? Which word out of pretty little girl would be my subject? Hopefully you see that girl is the subject of the sentence, and pretty and little describe the girl, and these are considered adjectives. That was tall. Well, where's my verb? In here, what you can see is the word that complicates was tall. Was tall is our verb, but because we have that in the middle, it makes it an incomplete sentence. If we remove that, of course, we can make that a full sentence. If we continued with that was tall, well, what did that pretty little girl do? The pretty little girl that was tall reached for the top shelf. Something that would relate to her being tall and something that would relate to an action that she completed. Looking at the next sentence, jumping high into the sky. How can this sentence be fixed? Well, jumping high into the sky, who or what jumped high into the sky? So the dog was jumping high into the sky, or jumping high into the sky, the man caught the frisbee. If you add it before or you add it after, either way you are adding both a subject and a verb. So, how I stated earlier, the dog was is a helping verb for jumping. An ing word could never stand alone. Last sentence, driving over the hill into the parking lot. Who or what was driving over the hill into the parking lot? Why were they driving over the hill into the parking lot? Of course, how we can fix this is saying the bus driver was slipping, driving over the hill into the parking lot. Or driving over the hill into the parking lot, comma, the car slipped down. Any way that you can add in a subject and a verb to make sure that was, were, or one of your helping verbs comes before or after driving. So after meaning after where the period is correctly now, or before the entire sentence. So why are these examples of a dependent clause? What were all these sentences missing? Any ideas? Hopefully you remember that these sentences were missing subjects and verbs. So, to find a subject, we ask ourselves who or what the sentence is about. So, who is the sentence about? Well, it's about the girl. What is that second sentence about? Oh, the phone. Who is the third sentence about? Well, most athletes. And who is the fourth sentence about? Oh, the teacher. So, a subject, if you're ever trying to find a subject in a sentence, ask yourself who or what is the sentence truly about? Subjects and verbs. I would like you to take a following moment. Take about 2 minutes, look over these next 4 sentences, figure out where are the subjects, and ask yourself who or what is the sentence about. All right, looking at sentence number 1. It says, at night the moon shines brightly in the sky. Well, who or what shines brightly? Hopefully you found that the moon shines brightly. Brightly in the sky, brightly, adverb, in the sky, prepositional phrase, at night, prepositional phrase. So the only thing that is important is our subject, moon, and shines, verb. Number 2, the boys played basketball all afternoon. Who or what played basketball? All afternoon? That's just added information for our verb. And, of course, the boys, the being an article. So we know that the boys are subject and they played, verb. Number 3, I couldn't find the remote control. Who or what couldn't find the remote control? Well, I couldn't, so I is my subject. And could find is my verb. 4, after many sleepless hours, the children finally went to sleep at the slumber party. At the slumber party is a preposition, and after many sleepless hours is our subordinate clause. So that's, of course, not important information, but it adds to our sentence. Well, who or what finally went to sleep? Well, the children. So children would be our subject. Finally, adverb and went is our verb. On the other hand, we go from subjects to the other part that is important in our sentence, which is a verb. To find a verb, ask yourself what the sentence says about the subject. The verb is the action of the sentence, and it will answer what the subject is doing. A second way to find the verb is to put I, you, we, he, she, it, or they, whichever form is appropriate. Side note, the word you will probably never be appropriate in front of the word that you think is the verb. If the verb is correct, it will allow the sentence to make sense with the subject. So the key point I just made, you is second person point of view. Most likely you are never going to write an academic piece of paper piece of paper, an academic paper, or a research format, and even any descriptive or narrative writing is not done with a you point of view. So of course, a second way to find the verb is to put a pronoun in front of it, but also make sure that we're using an appropriate form. So let's just keep in mind, let's keep you out of our papers. So looking at the verbs, with the underlined subjects, find the correct verb. Well, for number 1, in our commas we have who were 12. This is in a positive, so of course we know our verb should not be inside these 2 commas. I'll give you a moment to think. What's the verb in number 1? All right, hopefully you came up with the word ran. The girls ran from the high school. Well, why would 12-year-old girls run from the high school? Hopefully you have an idea that because they're 12, they don't belong at the high school. 12-year-olds are not high schoolers yet. Number 2, after school, the track athletes competed in 12 events. Looking at our verb, what's the action? It's not track athletes, because athletes, as we know, is our subject. So what did they do? They competed in 12 events, and so competed would be our verb. Verbs. With verbs, there are active verbs and linking verbs. Linking verbs are also known as helping verbs. With verbs, most of the time, we consider them active and they're doing action. And these verbs are showing or demonstrating the action being performed. So a few examples. The dog chased the squirrel. Well, you could physically see a dog chasing a squirrel. And the man ran after the dog, who was most likely chasing the squirrel. Linking verbs give information about the subject. Here's our example. The man is tall. Well, is, it tells us what the man is, and it tells us about the man, and it links together our adjective for our subject. So the man is tall, subject and verb. On the other hand, we have linking verbs, which we also might know as helping verbs. There are 23 linking verbs. They fill out the acronym known as CHAD-B-SWIM. So letters CHAD-B-S-W-I-M. Words that are linking verbs only start with these letters. So a few examples of linking verbs. Can, could, come. Has, have, had. Right now, I'd make a little plug that a good place to check out more linking verbs and to see a pretty interesting video is head over to YouTube and type in linking verbs. There are many little jingles having to do with helping verbs. After we talk about subjects and we talk about verbs, there's another type of subject known as a pronoun. So when we think of our subjects, the person, place, thing, quality, or idea that the sentence is about. Well, we insert a pronoun because the pronoun stands in place of the formal name. And most likely we use a pronoun because we have referred to this person, place, thing, quality, or idea many times throughout the paper. So instead of repeatedly writing out the formal name, we insert a pronoun. So with pronouns, the he, she, it, we, you, or they, in your papers for College Prep 1, you're not going to write the word you. You would use he, she, it, or they. Pronouns do not always make a sentence seem clear, but of course a sentence is complete when they're used because you still have a subject. Now when we say they do not always make a sentence seem clear, it's because pronouns aren't a formal name, and we're not always sure who we're referring back to, so we need to make sure we're proof editing and reading our papers correctly so we know. What I'd like you to do right now, write a sentence that correctly uses a pronoun. Pull out a piece of paper, make sure you get it down, write a full and complete sentence. Are you about finished? Well, with this sentence, Does the sentence make sense? Read it aloud. If you have a pronoun inserted into your sentence correctly, why does it not make sense? Well, most likely the idea that you're coming up with for why it does not make sense is because you don't have a formal noun inserted in this sentence. So we want to make sure, if you were writing a paper, the formal noun that went before it, you were able to understand that when you use a pronoun after, it's still talking about the same person, place, thing, quality, or an idea. So in your sentence, did you have a subject and a verb? So hopefully you put in a pronoun so you have a subject. Did you make sure that there was an active or a linking verb? And how could I connect this to another sentence to help it make sense? What I just stated is that hopefully you have a formal noun before it that you would be able to relate your sentence back to, meaning they go in order and you don't include other formal names to confuse you or your reader. So, another way you could put your two sentences together, that's right, you could use a semicolon, or you could use this sentence in a paragraph to help its understanding. Semicolons, when used correctly, help show relationship, and they are quite great for English writers. So a sentence may have one or more subjects and verbs. Here's my example. My friend ran errands and watched a movie last night. Well, take a moment. What's my subject? Did you find it? Hopefully you know that this sentence, friend, is your subject. So what did your friend do? What's my verb? Or what are my verbs? Hopefully you notice that ran and watched are your verbs. As you can see, both of them have something in common. When did you do this? When did they happen? What you should be able to notice are the tense. Are these in past, present, or future tense? As you can see, ran and watched, they've already happened and they're both in past tense. And that's something that you need to make sure of throughout your sentences, that words do not switch tenses. So I am running errands and I watched a movie last night. Well, if it happened last night, you can't be running errands because that means you're still presently doing it. That would be quite a long time. So you want to make sure that your tenses stick together. Second sentence, the class and teacher were astonished by the heat in the classroom without air conditioning. What are my subjects? Hopefully you see that class and teacher are our subjects here. Well, what did the class and teacher do? If you're looking for prepositions by the heat, in the classroom, and without air conditioning, those are all prepositional phrases. So, the verb, they were astonished. One thing to notice, we have two subjects here, but the subject that is closest to the verb, they need to match up in tenses. Meaning, you would say the teacher and the class, so versus singular and plural, they were astonished. So all together, they were astonished. If it was just the teacher, you would say that the teacher was astonished. So you need to make sure that your sentence and your subject and your verb all match up correctly. Here are a few ideas for prepositions. Not only can you use the saying, anywhere a mouse can go, but you can also use the bee flew blank bottle. The bee flew about the bottle. The bee flew behind the bottle. The bee flew from the bottle. The bee flew with the bottle. There are many ways that you can figure out if it's a preposition. About, above, across, among, around, at, before, behind, below, beneath, beside, between, by, during, except, from, for, in, inside, into, of, off, on, onto, over, through, to, toward, under, with. So these are examples of prepositions. When looking for a subject or a verb in a sentence, cross out all prepositional phrases. So if you're confused as to whether or not your sentence makes sense and it's full and complete, start by crossing off prepositions. When it comes to prepositions, the preposition will have an object of that preposition, meaning, if you saw back with our last sentence. So, when we looked at this sentence at the bottom, the class and the teacher were astonished. Everything else was a prepositional phrase. So, by the heat, by is our preposition, heat is the object of our preposition. In the classroom, in preposition, classroom is the object of the preposition. Without air conditioning, without preposition, air conditioning is our object of the preposition. So, of course, when it comes to prepositions, the prepositions will have an object of the preposition, meaning they might be confusing to you when it comes to the subject and verb, but objects of the preposition are never our subject or verb in our sentence. These words are called object of a preposition, not subject, not verb. Verb tenses. Verb tense can be very confusing, yet they are an important part of each paragraph and essay that you will write. So think of the word smile. What ways can you say smile? I smile, he smiles, you smile, she smiles, they smile. Those are all different verb tenses. In the past, I smiled, I will smile, and I did smile. Next tense, looking at laugh. Do you laugh? Did you laugh? Will you laugh? I laugh, I laughed, I will laugh. So, of course, thinking about all these, you have different tenses for the ways in which you're saying words. Did it happen in the past? Are you presently doing it? Are you going to continue doing it? So, I am laughing, present tense. I will laugh, future, and I laughed, past tense. Well, when did the verb happen? Or will it happen again? When it comes to verb forms, words like not, just, never, only, and always are not part of the verb. These words, I like you to consider them as absolutes. They absolutely cannot be part of your verb forms, and they make words and actions absolute. So I did not do that. I absolutely did not touch that. So the road was just completed last week. So, recently, but was completed, verb phrase. So again, here, what are the verbs? Was and completed. And just is not part of our verb sentence. Here's our next sentence. Larry did not finish the paper before class. Hopefully you know before class is a prepositional phrase. So what are our verbs? For this sentence, did finish is our complete verb. So keeping in mind, no verb ending in ing is ever the verb by itself. Ing words, if you remember, are what we call gerund phrases. And ing words need something else to help make it be the verb. No verb preceded by to is ever the verb by itself. Words that are preceded by to is considered an infinitive. It helps add more information to the sentence, but it's not vital to the sentence. The word to adds to it, but it is never, ever going to be to than the verb. This is the end of our Day 1 slideshow. What I would like you to take a moment and do right now is write out a few key points that you learned today. I'll be asking you to turn into infinity 5 key moments or 5 key ideas that you learned throughout this entire presentation. These presentation points will be due into infinity the day you watch this video. Thanks!